Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and I haven't been doing many TBR videos, but I am really excited to be taking part in a couple of readathons in March. If you haven't seen it already, my TBR for the 'Tis the Damn readathon, which is a Taylor Swift inspired readathon, I've put up already, but I couldn't resist getting involved as well in middle grade March. I realised I had quite a few middle grade on my shelf that it's about time I read and then pass on to Matilda to read. So I wanted to take part, so I'm going to try and read a book that fulfills one of every prompt. There's 5 prompts to pick from. This readathon is being hosted by a number of different hosts, but I always hear about it from Krista at Books and Jams channel, so make sure you check her channel out to find out more information and recommendations for the readathon. But I have picked my books. My first one for the prompt of a silhouette on the cover was really tricky, and I didn't want to go out and buy new books, so I have picked this one. It's a little bit tenuous, but I think we'll get away with it. It is, if you can see, if I hold it up really closely, if it focuses, you can see here these are people. I'm going to say that's a silhouette. I know it's tenuous, but it works for me. And this is Sky Song by Abby Elphinstone. Abby Elphinstone is a prolific writer, but I haven't read anything by her, and I know a lot of children at the school I used to work with loved her, so I think it's about time that I read this. It's set in this sort of icy, cold place with polar bears, and it's being ruled over, this area, by a evil ice queen, and it's about a young boy and girl who go off on an adventure to try and find something to defeat this ice queen, so that the different tribes in the area can live a life free of tyranny. So I look forward to this one. It just sounds really magical. This next book fulfills the prompt of a book with strong family elements, and that is Awake and Dreaming by Kit Pearson. This, I think, is a Puffin classic, so it must be a classic book. And it's about our young character Theo. She is from, she's lived with her mother, they're poverty stricken. I don't think they have a real home. And then she's adopted by this family and her life changes, but then she ends up going back to her mother, and she starts to question whether it was really real that she had this different life. And I think this is going to be a really interesting look into poverty and into what it must be like to feel like you don't really know where you belong, and perhaps want to belong somewhere that isn't with your parents. So for the prompt of a journey or an adventure, I am going to go with Starry River of the Sky by Grace Lynn. I read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, which is the first book in this sort of series, and I've got the next 2 on my shelf, so I want to get to this one. It says, the moon is missing in the remote village of Clear Sky, but only a young boy named Rendy seems to have noticed. Rendy has run away from home and is now working as a chore boy in the village inn. He can't help but notice the village's peculiar inhabitants and their problems. Where has the innkeeper's son gone? Why are Master Chow and Widow Yan always arguing? What is the crying sound Rendy keeps hearing? And how can crazy old Mr. Shan not know whether his pet is a toad or a rabbit? One day a mysterious lady arrives at the inn with a gift of storytelling, and she slowly transforms the villagers and Rendy himself. As she tells more stories and the days pass by in the village of Clear Sky, Rendy begins to realise that perhaps it is his own story that holds the answers to all the questions. So this sounds really exciting, and I'm looking forward to finding out a bit more about this. So for a book with fairy tale elements, I'm going to read The Day I Fell into a Fairy Tale by Ben Miller. Me and my daughter started reading this. We've only read about 30 pages and we stopped, and I'd really like to get a bit more into this. From what I can gather so far, in our main character's up-to-date world, a big supermarket has just suddenly appeared on the village green, and when she visits this supermarket that seems to have appeared overnight, there's a strange man stacking the shelves who she ends up getting a fairy story book from, and she reads one of the stories with her mum, and then they go back the next day to this shop, and she ends up falling into a magical world. And It was just a really lovely idea of a merge of modern day and fairy stories, and there's definitely, I think, a bit of a Rumpelstiltskin element in there. So I really want to finish reading this one, so this one fulfills the prompt of the fairy tale element. The final prompt was a really tricky one. It was to find a book that was written in the decade that you were born. Well, I was 1981 I was born, so I'm born in the 80s, and trying to find a book that was already on my shelf that was written in the 80s was really tricky. This one I think is going to fulfill the prompt. It was originally published in Japan in 1985. So I think that's okay. It wasn't published in the UK then, but it was originally published in Japan in 1985. And it has been a really, really brilliant Studio Ghibli film, which I loved, and I just love the look of this book. It is Kikis Delivery Service, and this is written by Aiko Kadono and illustrated by Joe Todd Stanton. I loved the animated film of this. And it says the classic Japanese story by award-winning author Aiko Kadono, now in a brand new translation. Witch in training Kiki and her cat Gigi are determined to find their own way in the world. Kiki isn't great at spells, so she sets up her own magical flying delivery service using her broomstick to deliver all over their new town. But there always seems to be trouble in the air. This funny and quirky original novel inspired the anime classic film Kiki's Delivery Service by the legendary director Hayao Miyazaki for Studio Ghibli. And yeah, it's about time that I read the actual story that inspired that brilliant film, and I think maybe I'll end up watching the film as well, and I'll try and encourage Matilda to watch it with me because I'd love her to watch some of the Studio Ghibli films. So that is my TBR for middle grade March. What are you reading for the different prompts? Let me know. Have you read any of these? Did you enjoy any of these? And I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.